My name is Jason S. Fung. Welcome back to Vanilla Club Podcast. Here's something I didn't quite expect to be doing when I started this podcast. Speaking to someone whose photographs I have on my wall. Yes, the chap whose artworks are on my wall. I get to interview him. Greg Girard is a Canadian photographer who straddles a lovely space between photojournalism and fine art photography. He is an award-winning photographer who's been published in Time magazine and National Geographic. He's exhibited at the ICP in New York and at the M+ Museum in Hong Kong. Greg is also author of a number of important photographic monographs to come out of Asia in the last half-century, including City of Darkness, which along with his colleague Ian Lambeau documented the Kowloon Walled City before it was demolished in 1993. Greg arrived in Hong Kong in 1974 at the tender age of 18 years old on a freighter, 18 days across the Pacific Ocean, armed with a camera and a handful of Kodachrome film. In this episode, we go through some of his images together. I have the distinct honor of critiquing one of my photographic idols. And for me, that was something really cool. Greg's stuff is remarkable, and I think it's remarkable because he blends the ordinary and the extraordinary in such unexpected ways. This is a long one. I tried to make it par for Martin Scorsese's The Irishman on Netflix. So you tell me how we did. Here's Greg Girard. We hope you enjoy. We'd like to welcome Greg Girard, award-winning Canadian photographer who has an oeuvre of many years spanning many decades. He's won awards. He's been featured in Time magazine, National Geographic. You've done exhibitions in, such prominent places as the ICP in New York. And you are a publisher of many coffee table books that are eye-catching, remarkable, and monographs that document this sort of fleeting time and place that are just remarkable. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for sharing some of your time to talk a little bit about your work and story.
Well, thanks for that assessment and introduction. Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's great. It's my pleasure. And as someone who, I grew up in Hong Kong, most of my formative years, I would say, were in Hong Kong. I did go to high school and college in California. But as someone who lived the 80s, again, as a kid, there's so much of your work, you think about the City of Darkness series, and then going before that, the Hong Kong PM, of which, I have the physical copy of the book here. This is just remarkable. I was thinking that with the time that we have, perhaps we could, one way of approaching it would be to have a sort of grand survey and walk us through sort of your career. But if it's okay with you, I would like to really focus and dive into the individual images, which again are so striking. They tell such a visual story. But for me, who have, someone who has a sort of lived experience with many of these images and many of the places behind these images, if it's okay with you, I'd like to just dive into some of the gallery in Hong Kong PM 1974, 1989.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay. So I've got, I don't know if you can see what I've got here with my shared screen.
Yeah.
Starting off with image 1 of 41 here. This one, again, the color. Tell us a little bit about this book, how it spans almost 15 years. This was your earlier stages of your photographic career. You'd done work in Japan. That was your first contact with Asia. But maybe, Greg, if you could just help set the scene for us, Where are you in your career? Where are you in your head in 1974?
Career is far too grand to call what I was doing a career as a 18-year-old. I'd been photographing for a couple years already at that point. So, as much as you can be serious about what you're doing as an 18-year-old, I think I was serious about, making pictures, but what would ever come of it was way too early to really think about. Um, but I knew I wanted to go to Hong Kong, to that part of the world from a pretty early age. So in the last year of high school, I booked passage on a freighter traveling from San Francisco to Hong Kong and saved money over the course of a year. And after graduating, worked to save money, and then in the following summer, took a freighter to Hong Kong, 18 days across the Pacific. And it was the last days of passenger carrying cargo ships. Everything was being replaced by container ships, which didn't, for the most part, offer passenger accommodations. So I knew from an early age I wanted to cross the Pacific to that part of the world. And so I got to Hong Kong, and after 18 days, which is a long time when you're 18 years old, it's different now. 18 days goes by quickly, but at that time it seemed to take forever. And so I arrived in Hong Kong in the summer of 1974, and got off the ship. It was daytime. Found a hotel, and then started making pictures. And this was probably one of the first pictures I took at night on Nathan Road in Tsim Sha Tsui, that kind of tourist area. And everything is bursting with neon. But if you're living in Hong Kong, it's just very matter of fact. It's nothing special. I was coming from Vancouver, which used to be a very alive with neon city, but neon was on the way out by the 70s, being replaced by more modern kind of lighting. But I, saw this incredible, ordinary scene of Hong Kong neon everywhere, and no one paid any attention to it. There's just so much of it; it was totally normal. And whether you're looking up at it or reflected down on a wet sidewalk, I mean, the effect of neon and neon light and all the intensity of that kind of lighting and signage and activity, it was everywhere. So I was, just blown off my feet by this spectacular new city.
Thank you for that, because it's got to be just a remarkable entry point. Again, it's like Times Square or Piccadilly Circus, right? I mean, this Nathan Road would have been, that was where you went if it was your first time in the city. I can imagine that was where you landed. And as you said, it was a tourist hub, and then it was awash with neon. You've really set the scene here. Are you shooting? Is this Fuji? Is this Kodak? How do you get such a vibrant purplish pink hue?
Yeah, we can thank Kodachrome for that.
Okay, Kodachrome. Yeah. Wow. And again, most of these images through this period are slide film that you're shooting on?
Correct. Yeah, all slide film. In those days, I carried two cameras, one with black and white and one with color, and would use both interchangeably according to, however things struck me. There was no real system to it other than what, how it looked and how you thought it might turn out as a picture. And maybe it's worth remembering that in those days, you would get your film processed after you took it. But in the case of Kodachrome, you'd have to mail it to a Kodachrome laboratory, and there wasn't one in Hong Kong, so you'd have to send it to Australia or Japan or Canada. And in those days, when you bought Kodachrome film, it came prepaid processing with a mailer to send it to a Kodak lab. So I would, photograph the roll of film. When it's finished, it goes into the mailer, this little envelope. You put a stamp on it and you send it to a lab either in Canada or Australia or wherever, and it goes to your home address or the address where you want the slide sent. So all the Kodachrome film shot on this first tour through Asia, which took about 9 months. I didn't see it till 9 months after the photographs were taken, and going back in this case to Canada and looking at it where it had stacked up in my parents' basement.
Did you take notes so that 9 months later you'd be able to refer back to when something was taken at what shutter speed and what aperture?
I didn't. The Kodak labs, they put the month and year stamped onto the cardboard slide mount. So that information was there, but I didn't feel it's necessary for the way I'm doing things to think about shutter speeds and the rest of that.
Definitely. All right. So if we move on to image 2, this is Wan Chai, is it not?
That's correct.
The Plaza Grill and Wine Bar, I assume. Wow. This is clearly no longer this entire structure, and the entire look and feel of this, very English colonial design is still standing in a few pockets here and there in Hong Kong, but largely the streetscape doesn't exist, does it?
No, it doesn't. In many ways, Hong Kong feels the same in terms of scale at street level. There's a kind of lingering smallness of some of those buildings in the post-war walk-ups that were so common all over the territory. Those exist in, as you say, in pockets or in stretches here and there. But the signage and that peculiar kind of mix of English and Chinese that is so much of Hong Kong's texture from that period, a lot of that is gone for the most part.
So before you got on the freighter in Vancouver, right? Because Vancouver presumably would have had, being on the Pacific, I mean, maybe we're imbuing it with some of our current assumptions about it being extremely friendly to Chinese people. Did you have much of a concept of what you might find in Hong Kong when you were, let's say 16 or 17 in Vancouver?
Not really. I mean, Vancouver is a, Pacific facing port city with a sizable Chinese population, a big community, especially now. But back then, when you talked about Chinese people, that meant by definition pretty much people from Hong Kong. Mainland China was still virtually closed during the Cultural Revolution, 66 to 76, and you simply didn't see people from the mainland out in the world. That would change soon enough into the 90s in particular. But in the mid 70s, late 70s, you didn't see mainland folks traveling or going to school or conducting business elsewhere. So a Chinese person, pretty much by definition, had Hong Kong origins. And so that part of Vancouver shaped the Chinatown in Vancouver and every other Chinatown in North America and elsewhere in the world, I think. So I was familiar with that kind of Chinese culture as you would find in a Chinatown. But as a young person, what does that mean? It means Chinese food and the parallel world that would exist in these few blocks. And I can't say I was necessarily drawn to it, but it was very, you can say conventionally exotic in terms of how exotic things could be at home. So there was that. But it really was a photograph I saw in a Time Life book that made me want to go to Hong Kong. I'd seen it in this Time Life series on photography that was published in the early 1970s, and it was a picture of Hong Kong Harbor showing this, actually an early 60s scene with the neon of the day and a kind of a workaday harbor scene with local cargo craft, working junks. And it was just a very kind of unglamorous look at this place, the neon, the mix of Western signage, local working craft, and it had this kind of atmosphere in it that really appealed to me. And, it was also the way the photographer kind of made the picture, which was to include things rather than, I don't know, let's say, wait for the ship to go by against a more neutral sky to kind of emphasize that. But he kind of put all these things together that maybe didn't necessarily go together. At the time, I wouldn't have been able to talk about it in those terms, I don't think. But anyways, that picture had something that really kind of grabbed me, and it literally made me want to go to Hong Kong. And so that's really where the impulse came from.
Because if you look at this image, the Plaza Grill, I mean, something that is just like a recurring theme in your work is this sort of ordinary meets the extraordinary. It's how I look at it. When you think about this scene, it's so ordinary. I mean, this chap in the scene is just, I mean, we've seen this guy before. He's just nonplussed, doing his thing. He's going about his day. I mean, this job doesn't really exist anymore, right? But
the doorman in the white shirt.
Yeah. But it's such a ordinary scene, but the light is just, it's that contrast. And then you've got this cinematic, what's happening in that taxi cab. It's like Taxi Driver, from Martin Scorsese. I mean, what is the doorman looking at the cab? Is there something going on there? Is this before the act, after the act? So there's this lurking tension in this scene that I find that juxtaposition of ordinary and extraordinary. I love it.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, as a very young person, I think maybe part of it has a little bit to do with just the adult world that is just poised to open up to you when you're 18 in a strange place. I mean, there's not very many pictures of bar interiors. It's mostly
Well, like this one,
some, for example. Yeah, I mean, there are some indeed, but
where you could buy cigarettes from a vending machine, which to kids these days just sounds absolutely mad. But that's how you got cigarettes. You'd put in a Hong Kong dollar or whatever they cost, and then out would come a pack of cigarettes.
Indeed, yeah. Well, jukeboxes and cigarette machines were, the features of a lot of bars on, in these places.
There we go. And again, there's a juxtaposition in this one too, right? Because to a keen observer, you're also seeing the Taoist shrine up the top.
Right.
Which again is a sort of feature. You might not catch that necessarily if you're not as familiar with sort of the animist belief system, that pops up in Hong Kong and other parts of all over Southeast Asia, for example. But this is, again, you got that air conditioner unit. There is the jukebox. There is, just how lush these colors are. You don't see this type of thing. People use these colors and they take them and they make them some retro thing. The actual bars don't look like this anymore, do they?
No, they don't. But they, this kind of thing maybe serves as a jumping off point for interior design today, right? So.
Oh, and then we'll blur these out, or certain sections here. But this was a common scene, and again, this was 1974. I guess 74 from a let's say a U.S. perspective, right? Canada didn't participate in the Vietnam War, right? So we're speaking, let's say, from a U.S. perspective. My sense is that 74 was a year where it didn't seem it probably seemed like South Vietnam could have probably kept on going, right?
Yeah, that was certainly the hope. But by 74, the U.S. Ground troops are gone from South Vietnam, and the Seventh Fleet, which is headquartered in Yokosuka, Japan, it's still patrolling the South China Sea, and Hong Kong is a port of call for sailors from the Seventh Fleet and other merchant vessels, as well as the military ones. And so, you've got this kind of khaki playing cards, slash kind of girly pictures, plus the Chinese Hong Kong junk, a ship. So it's this kind of stuff which was for sale in an alley in Central or in Wan Chai, just souvenirs basically for guys.
But the funny thing is that these could have very well been made in Hong Kong.
That's probably right. They probably were made in Hong Kong.
People forget that Hong Kong was a manufacturing powerhouse. I mean, this is kind of forgotten. But in the 70s, not till sort of probably the late 80s, did Hong Kong become basically a victim of its own success, in that it was so successful as this manufacturing superpower, in a sense, and that all of those factories then shifted over to the Pearl River Delta. And then there were so many Hong Kong bosses that set up factories there, trained all of the people, and then obviously knowledge transfer and everything like that. But in 74, my guess would have been that these cars would have been, probably could have been made near Nathan Road, maybe in Kowloon Tong or something.
Yeah, Kowloon Tong or To Kwa Wan or somewhere like that.
Yeah, To Kwa Wan. Yeah. To Kwa Wan, where my grandfather was a longshoreman way back when. Yeah, way back when.
Amazing.
So this is notorious. Could we use that word? Infamous. I mean, I think this was a port of call within a port of call for any service member back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, Wan Chai, the world of Susie Wong and all that. I mean, it was Lockhart Road. It's where the sailor bars were, and in the 70s, it was still active in that way. By the 80s, it was all changing. Post Vietnam War, and just the change of Hong Kong as a service economy in terms of finance and connecting the rest of the world with the Pearl River Delta. So
this scene that we have here with Club Pussycat, this is sort of the setup image for a number of ancillary images that support, which we'll see coming up here. Okay, I love this image. So set the scene. Would this have been in Club Pussycat?
It probably wasn't in Pussycat Club. Indeed it was. Some years later, I mean, that first picture you showed with the neon and the car driving by was in 74. And I was visiting Hong Kong at that time, and then later moved there in 82. And so this was taken in 85. These guys would be from the U.S. 7th Fleet, one of the ships that is, anchored in Hong Kong for a few days as part of their regional patrol. And they put on their best clothes to go out to the bars. The girls are Filipina young women, possibly working as maids, as household help in Hong Kong. It's still something that goes on today, and no idea about the relationships there. But I think dating in the most basic sort of way, which doesn't mean we're not talking about commercial um, companionship or anything, but how they got together, who knows? But yeah, that'd be a common scene in the bars in Wan Chai in the 80s. And you'd have a woman trying to sell some flowers at an inflated price to the guys to buy for the girls. And I'm just, there with my camera trying to make pictures of this, this Wan Chai scene, which by the mid 80s is already, changed from its kind of heyday in the 60s and into the 70s.
But how you get this shot is almost as remarkable as the shot itself. I mean, if we could only have a mirror of you taking the photo.
At night, all sorts of strange things go on. So somebody walking around with the camera is just one of those things as well,
And because looking at it today, everyone in this scene would have their smartphone. They'd all have an Instagram account. In some sense, this image is not reproducible today. Everyone would be on guard. They would be somehow ready to pose or decline the photo. Whereas in the 80s, in the analog days, you're able to slip in and sort of just capture this moment in its like purity.
Yeah, I guess things are different now. But I mean, having said that, carrying a camera with a flash today, that's going to kind of set you apart from people with phones. So, I mean, it's different, but maybe not that different, I mean, having the camera with the flash or off camera flash, you're going to look like a photographer, rather than just somebody with a phone with a camera in it, and just the way you act is going to be a little bit different, the way you move, the way you make pictures, the way a photographer does. It just, there's still that. So, but yeah, fair enough. There's going to be the ease that everybody can do their own version of it now. There's that for sure. But, photographers are still photographers, I think.
This is another modern classic of yours. What's happening in this scene?
Well, when the fleet's in town, the shore patrol is there to establish some kind of order. Fights break out, people misbehave, the local police might get called, and these guys are there to kind of try to reduce whatever trouble that kind of crops up. It's usually just young guys drinking too much and getting into fights with each other mostly, but sometimes with locals too. And then there's the British Navy is also stationed in Hong Kong, so the two bump up against each other, and fights break out.
This presumably is on the upper deck of a tram.
Yeah, precisely.
This look again it's so ordinary. We've seen anyone who's ridden on a Hong Kong tram has seen this scene. They have versions of this image in their head, but you've captured something. He's in thought, he's anxious, he's pensive. What's happening here?
I think he's a guy working as a courier, and he's got some letters stuffed into his work shirt, and he's taking them across town to deliver them. That's what I'm guessing is going on here. So it's just a guy in the middle of his workday who's hopped on a tram, because his boss says take the cheapest form of transport to deliver this thing. That would be a tram. So
this image I love because, again, you've got the red and the blue in the background. And I think because of the scratched up plexiglass or whatever, if it's plate glass, I don't know, some type of glass, it creates this sort of light box effect almost. And there's movement, but you've captured the foreground frozen, but the background is fuzzy. So you got these two light boxes of contrasting red and blue. And then this guy, and you've captured his forehead, and the light is just, it's that dappled Hong Kong light that anyone who's just sort of pays attention, it's just, how would you describe it? It's because it's built up. When you do get these rays of light in Hong Kong, they sometimes they're just magical in a way that you don't quite get in a less built up area.
I think what's happened here is that, it's daytime, and so you're in the tram, so it's actually dark in the tram, and you'd have to wait for another tram to go by so that the background isn't completely blown out, and you get that more balanced light when that happens. Without the tram there, I can't remember, but there might have been sunlight hitting a building, just beyond the tram. In any case, it would have been a much brighter background without something passing by. And it's just, sheer luck that it's, one part is red, one part's blue. That's just pure luck.
One of the questions that I have to ask you is, do you think that being a foreigner affords you a unique ability to capture some of these images? Are some of these uncapturable by local people who somehow maybe they can't blend in a certain way? Maybe a foreigner can blend into the scene or be disarming in the sense that, okay, it's just a foreigner, whatever. But if a local shoved a camera this close to someone in a tram, would they somehow draw the ire of the subject?
Yeah, there's maybe something to that a little bit in that, people don't know if you're a resident or a tourist, in a place like Hong Kong. It's so full of so many different kinds of people, especially these days. But back then in the 80s, it was an international city at that time, and it's full of people from everywhere, and nobody knows if you're living there or visiting. You might get a little bit of a break carrying a camera and making pictures, oh, he's just a tourist, leave him alone. There's maybe a little bit of that. But I think the other thing is that, to my mind, Hong Kong kind of didn't wake up to itself until maybe the early 90s, in the sense that there was a generation that could have the luxury of just looking at it in a very neutral, objective, or even poetic way. I think there's a kind of a certain evolution has to happen in a place for young people to be walking around with cameras paying attention to it, and that's happened pretty much everywhere now. That generational evolution has kind of happened in every place, where every place is worth looking at. But maybe in the 80s, still in Hong Kong, maybe it took an outsider, you can say, to appreciate it in a way that just a very few years later, young Hong Kong people would do the same.
Mm.
And I think that's also true of why me and my colleague Ian Lambert photographing the Kowloon Walled City, why didn't Hong Kong photographers do it? And I think it's just an evolution was about to happen, and had the walled city lasted just a few years longer, young Hong Kong photographers and filmmakers would have been all over the place photographing it. But it disappeared just in the minutes before Hong Kong woke up to itself. And so it was left to people like me and Ian to pay attention to it. You'll remember that every Hong Kong parent, told their kids to, stay away from the Kowloon Walled City. Dirty, dangerous, and it's
drug
full of
ridden,
drug-ridden, nefarious characters.
gambling den.
Yeah, all of Vice was there. To
All the vice was there, and the Royal Hong Kong, police would not set foot. That's what we were told, whether that was true or not.
yeah, no, it wasn't really true. But it was one of those myths that linger. So
Is this sort of Wan Chai Market?
yeah, exactly right.
Okay. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I walked through it. I used to live in Wan Chai, walked through it hundreds of times. It's just a guy going to work, coming back from work. This is afternoon, morning?
Afternoon, yeah. Either coming back from work or just a retired gentleman who, when he goes out, he dresses up in the way that
And
a
he
certain
looks
generation did.
great.
He looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
He looks great. Dapper, just he's got the look, Speaking of the look, this is so evocative. It's like going to the Regent Hotel and going to the gallery, the sort of, and then there'd be the, tailor running out at you, giving you a name card, and it's so evocative. Maybe this image is a little bit abstract for someone who didn't see it or live it, but this one is just, I can feel this image.
I mean, it's always the same, for me. Like, I look at this and it was a very ordinary scene, but it just somehow you actually kind of go like, wait a minute, that's probably a really interesting picture. But it's like the next shot was equally photographable, if you know what I mean, because it all looked like this. And yet, okay, the door's open, you've got this different color temperature of light. And maybe it was just enough to kind of go, that's going to register maybe interestingly on slide film, which is more kind of sensitive to different color temperatures. They'll be more pronounced. So maybe that'll be something that goes on. But yeah, I mean, it's always, interestingly enough, the most ordinary things years later, which are somehow interesting, rather than anything that's based on an event or something nominally special.
The rubbish bin, I will bet you, was made in Hong Kong.
Could well have been. Yeah.
And the suits would have been made, in Hong Kong.
Mid-'80s, still made in Hong Kong in the back of the shop, likely, or somewhere nearby. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see that this is the power suit era, right? That look at the width of the lapel.
Yeah.
This is a time when Hong Kong, this is 80s was boom time in Hong Kong. And, the consumer goods proliferation would have been happening big time right now. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. And this is in Mong Kok, on Shanghai Street. So it's a working class part of town, rather more ordinary kinds of stuff. By the mid-'80s or early '80s, 1983, there's plenty of glamour and signature brands available in Japanese electronics, which are for sale all over the territory, and advertised on billboards and on trams and in the NTR and on television. But this was a more working class kind of scene, and it's daytime TV playing on the TV set, terrestrial broadcast from TVB or ATV, black and white 50s or 60s Cantonese opera drama on TV, or some period drama, daytime black and white television for the few people at home watching it. Yeah, I don't know. It just sort of had this, beautiful ordinary to it.
This is like historical testimony. This one here.
Yeah,
This,
still
this
a rickshaw still being used in an ordinary way.
yeah.
They hung for many years for the tourists, but this is early 1975, and still in use for people to get things delivered or to carry shoppers, home from the stores. So they were still around, obviously on their way out, soon to be gone forever. But yeah, they were still around.
So this this is in Central, right?
That is in Central, yeah, yeah, just towards Shanghai. Yeah.
Okay, so what's happening here?
This is a guy selling medicine or some, kind of um, Girard at a Cantonese opera on Peng Chao. I lived
Peng
there
Chao.
for a few months in 1983, and that was just evening entertainment. You know how it works. The opera arrives at a location, and they set up the bamboo scaffolding, build a stage. The performance happens over the course of a few nights, then they take it down and move somewhere else.
Yeah, because the way that you frame this one and looking at that sort of the golden line there, I mean, I don't know if it was your intent, but it certainly evokes the sort of totally different scene, totally different intent, but it has a sort of like little red book feel to it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, indeed.
So this is
Listening to the horse racing,
the horse racing, yeah.
Happy Valley.
Yeah, it's got yamban, so hot drinks. So there would be a cake shop.
Yeah, next door there. Yeah. So Johnson Road in Wan Chai.
And then this lady, what is she doing? It's got that cinematic feel to it.
Yeah, shop assistant. There, it was just how Hong Kong and other cities where there's life in the street. It's just an endless kind of arrangement of things going on every second. So anywhere you can find a kind of a background and things just play out in front of it.
This is the movie, the cinema.
Yeah, that's right. It's ushers or ticket takers at a cinema on Nathan Road.
So this is
Yeah, same thing. Adult cinema.
yes, adult cinema.
Yeah, on Nathan Road.
This looks like the Disney cast members outfit. Is this Kowloon side?
Helen side, yeah, indeed. Yeah, somewhere along Nathan Road, young woman or girl waiting for the bus.
Yeah, the sort of traffic pole with the black and white.
Bus sign, yeah. I think it's a steel tire rim to anchor the thing in place there. Kowloon Motor Bus Company, keeping costs down. So,
Well, we've gained so many of these digital tools, but we've also lost so much materiality in our lives. I mean, that someone had to design that. It's not just an impromptu thing.
yeah.
Oh, this is a great one. So take us to this scene.
It'd be in North Point in the morning. I'm just walking around. Trucks are making their deliveries. People are working. And I, walked up to those guys and, maybe I'd planned to do a more candid picture, but they saw me and guy did that for me and looked good.
Mm. Do you ask people if you can take their photograph or do you just do it?
Yeah, I just do it. But, there's body language and, either you ask or you don't ask or some combination of the two.
Does it change based on where you are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, different places have different tiers of personal entitlement to privacy, in crowded cities, in Asia, people are more relaxed in the street about private space and what's entitled or not. People are less bothered by being around other people or people getting too close to them. It's just a more crowded world. And, probably Europe, North America, people have the most elevated sense of entitlement to their space and not being noticed or photographed or bothered. So it's sure it's different photographing in different places.
Oh, this is, again, one of those classically, uniquely Hong Kong moments.
Yeah, I wanted to do a picture of An Hoi for a magazine article that I'd convinced a magazine to be interested in. And so I knew I wanted to photograph her in some classic Hong Kong sort of setting. And what's more classic than a cha chan tent, at in the morning or at lunchtime. And so I got her to, have breakfast with me, and she brought along some like trashy gossip magazine to read over our breakfast. And a waiter with cigarette in his mouth taking orders is pretty classic looking kind of Hong Kong waiter. So that kind of worked out.
Yeah. And the light too, that there's something about it. When would this have been taken?
That was 86. Just learning how to use flash, bounced off the ceiling, kind of mixed with ambient light. Um, the film is quite slow. So, I wanted a good quality picture of her rather than something grainy. So I knew I wanted to at least use bounce, to kind of, get her nice and sharp and with good color. But yeah, just balancing out the ambient light, which was quite warm. So overall, the picture is kind of on the warm side.
Have you stuck with 35 millimeter through most of your work?
In those days, but in the late 90s, I started using medium format, and then by early 2000s was pretty much completely switched over to medium format.
And what were the reasons for that?
This camera, the Mamiya 7, when it was introduced, it was very lightweight and nice big piece of film, better quality. So I wanted to see what that looked like and whether I could use it for magazine assignments or whatever. And for a few years, I balanced kind of both of them, doing mostly magazine assignments on 35 mil slide film and starting to, really get to learn how to use the Mamiya 7. It's had a lot of limitations compared to 35 mil system camera. But when I moved to Shanghai in 1998, I wanted to work on like my own new project and sort of stop doing things just for magazines. And having that camera was a little bit of a psychological cheat, or conceit, so that when I'm using the Mamiya 7, I'm photographing for myself, let's call it. And, that allowed me to not think about whether this could get published in a magazine or to try to sell it through my agent to some magazine to use it for some sort of story. So it was a way to kind of back away from the machinery of making pictures for magazines, which had given me a really good living and allowed me to get published in places I never really dreamed of getting published in. But after a number of really good years, I wanted to step away from that and see if I could, in a way, kind of go back to my origins and just, make pictures, not sure exactly of what was going to happen with them, rather than trying to kind of fit them into some publishable framework for magazines. So, yeah, it's something I needed to do, but just that little maneuver of going from one format to another allowed me, it kind of freed me a bit to go back to just making pictures for myself.
Is this Ablay Chow?
No, that's actually Kuntong.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Kind of the back, like factory zone, Hong Kong, mid 80s, early 80s. That factory world that all moved to South China. It was, as you well know, in like To Guawan and Kuntong and all areas of greater Kowloon, those unglamorous, unpretty factory zones, which are, parts of Appalachia Chow indeed are still like that today. And, I kind of wanted to photograph the ordinary working districts of Hong Kong. And, I'd been making pictures at night of that ordinary kind of stuff, not the glamour and the neon and the nightlife, but just the ordinary world of what so much of Hong Kong consists of. It always looks different at night than it does in the daytime, of course. And I was really having a very big adventure at this time of photographing places at night for no reason other than to see what it looks like at night. And, slide film has, lower ISO, so long exposures on a tripod, and you get these unnatural color shifts because everything's, film's balanced for sunlight and no sunlight at all. It's all artificial light from various sources. So when you get the film back, especially in the beginning, it was always a really interesting surprise to see how things shifted. And so I did that for a number of years, photographing those ordinary parts of Hong Kong this way.
So you set off after dinner with your camera, presumably multiple rolls of film, a flash, and also a tripod.
Yeah, more tripod than flash. I might have left the flash at home unless I was planning to do something that needed flash. But for this kind of picture, I knew I was going to make this kind of picture, so I brought the tripod, of course, and may have left the flash at home.
And how are you getting around the city?
MTR, minibus, walking, maybe a taxi, depending.
I love it. Blending in. Wow. So this is Peng Chau?
Yeah, that's Peng Chau. So again, just photographing this ordinary stuff on the little island I was living on, just how stuff looks at night.
Yeah. And these are working sort of dinghy boats,
for real, close in fishing, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that light. It's just, you can set filters and everything in digital, but it's still that quality of light. This image that I just love, that desert blush red.
Yeah. It's a lot of this technique is about having the light source outside of the frame, and it could be a neon sign, it could be street lights, it could be car lights, whatever, illuminating the scene from off frame. And again, the slide film gives you a more saturated look if you expose it properly. So, and I just like these, the workaday kind of Hong Kong stuff that's in this case parked in the street, and the shuttered shops. So Hong Kong, every place looks its own way at night, and I was having a big adventure, both getting to know what the film does and exploring the city, these ordinary neighborhoods. I think this is in Mong Kok Yau Ma Tei, I'm not sure, but getting to explore the city at night.
Oh, this one, I've been in Hong Kong Harbor I remember, dad or the sort of, I think it was my dad, just told me that this sign is the size of a 747.
That's a great statistic. Wow. I didn't realize it, but it's exactly right. If maybe bigger. Yeah.
Everyone knows this sign. If you lived in Hong Kong in the 80s, you know this sign.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still there.
Yeah. It's funny. I posted it on Instagram some years ago, and the owner of the sign got in touch, or the family that had a connection to that sign. I believe they were the owners of the sign, and they just wrote to say, like, thanks for posting that. So I think it's gone now.
Yeah. This is Kuntong, right?
That's actually Causeway Bay,
Okay, okay, yes, yes.
just on the North Point side of Causeway Bay, Victoria Park. So
Yeah, I mean, you would have captured this on would have been a really nice day.
yeah,
Yeah. So here we see the unlit neon. So you're playing with us a little bit because it's neon,
yeah.
but it's unlit. So our expectations are being thrown a little bit off.
Well, I think, yeah, you see it as this incredible structure that it is. Just this big, beautiful thing.
And those look like illegal structures to an untrained eye.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, on
Um,
the top right for sure. Yeah, maybe middle of the lower building too. Yeah,
this sort of materiality and again, these handwritten fonts, I guess we took a lot of that for granted, but it's just so much more elegant.
yeah. I think we do. I mean, we still do, don't we? I mean, these pictures that get this vintage or retro bump today. I mean, everything looked like this, but maybe what one is attracted to is just the things you notice that are starting to get a little bit stale. They haven't quite crossed over at the time into retro territory. They, of course, are fully in it now. But I mean, walking around any place today, the same thing happens. There's all this stuff that nobody's paying attention to, that is starting to go stale, that hasn't achieved retro anything yet. And most cities kind of look like that actually anyways. Things that are 10 years old, 8 years old, 15 years old, maybe it's starting to kind of you know head into that territory. But most places are just kind of surrounded by a kind of stale ordinary.
Where are we here?
We're at the base of a
Oh,
collapsed.
Blue Pool Road, right?
It's actually confusing. It's called New Blue Pool Restaurant, but it's actually
Okay.
Kane Road, just the bottom of mid levels, upper central. So yeah, something just didn't quite hold up and collapsed into the streets before they could clean it up. So it had just happened.
That light source off frame. It's again, you look at it and it just, for me, it's that double take as to, is this real, right? It's such a real scene. It's so ordinary, but at the same time, it then draws you in. Wait, are you putting me on? Is this like a movie set? I think everyone in Hong Kong has an uncle like this.
Yeah, I wish we all did.
Yeah. And you've got your rice cooker, you've got your radio,
Yeah.
2 radios.
So it's a secondhand market in Samshui.
And some Soipo, yeah. Some nudie mags.
Yeah, adult magazines, in the secondhand bin outside a bookstore on Temple Street.
Temple Street.
Mm.
And what's happening here?
Yeah, I just clipped something from the Hong Kong Standard or South China Morning Post from the personal section, and I'd buy these. What do you call them? The manhwa. I used to like buying them for their covers because they look so great. And I just had this clipping, and I just stuck the two together rather than just, I don't know, made a little little mini collage kind of thing and photographed it. I like the personal columns, right? That's how people found each other. Yeah, no, I just liked all the different things that were written on there by different people. And for folks who care to linger on that, there's interesting stuff to read.
Mm. Well, you had to be pithy. You had to sell yourself in sort of, and I think in those days they would have charged per letter,
Yeah,
right?
per line
So
or per
per
word,
line,
maybe.
per word.
And both men looking for women and women looking for men. So a married Chinese lady looking for friendship, and vice versa.
38 Bulkley Street, second floor, Hong Hum, Kowloon, Hong Kong, Catherine Zhang.
Yeah,
Wow.
amazing.
This image is not, I think, in your gallery, but this is one of my favorites of this book. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, well, very standard kind of scene back in the day, just a car park. Probably photographed from a neighboring car park, just looking across the street at the other one, and it happened to have a guy sitting there, one of those, probably a security guard, just putting in his time. I understand that building has been torn down as of a couple of years ago, the Yaomati car park, which was, I'm not sure if that's the one where it had the highway going through it, but maybe that one is still there, but it's in that neighborhood.
This image, I can't help but think of Cartier-Bresson. One of my favorite images that I just keep going back to of HCBs is, I don't know if you know which one I'm referring to, but it's the one, I think it's in, he took it in Spain. It's got that Mediterranean harsh light, harsh shadows with this it's sort of like, it almost looks like a board game. There's just a little cutout window here, a little cutout there, and irregular. The title escapes me.
And it's got a silhouette of a person passing down below it.
It's got, yeah. That one, I don't know why, but that image popped in my mind when I saw this. I mean, I've gone back to this in the book, but these sort of cutouts, and this guy, what's remarkable is that he's totally oblivious to the rest of the scene, right? He's on this level. But when you present it this way, there's something about it. It triggers that voyeurism. Whether we like it or not, it does. And I think a lot of your work, whether it's intentional or not, or it I don't know, it says something deeper about your subconscious, but it's triggering of the voyeurism bug.
Well, we all want to stare, but we don't because it's rude. So, what's photography lets you do that, I guess.
Yeah. So this takes us to this image, which, funnily enough, when I was learning photography, I took an image exactly of this scene of a steer head from a Chinese, from a wet market. When was this? Is this mid 80s?
Yeah, early 80s, 83, I think. I think just at a butcher shop along Shanghai Street in Yamate, Mongkok.
That's my editorial. Is it just, that's how I frame it. It's the ordinary juxtaposed with the extraordinary. So a scene that everyone who's been to a wet market, you've seen this, but when you freeze frame that one frame, I mean, you look at it and you're like, wow, the eye is so vivid. It's a bit jarring. This is quite a confronting image, in many ways, actually quite confronting, because the red brings up the sort of devilish thing, the horns too, kind of, obviously we're reading too much into it, but I'm just giving you a bit of my free flowing thought, that's being triggered by this image. It's a very powerful image.
Thank you. Well, it's a shocking sight, but it's also very ordinary. I mean, people walk up and down the street past this all day long. And, once you notice it, I guess you could do two things. You can keep walking or you can take a picture. And so, made, I probably just made one frame, and walked on.
Oh, I've been here.
Oh, really?
I've been here. I mean, this is the basis of it's a great hike up here. So that's the harbor in the background, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Way in the background. Yeah.
So, you know, Kai Tak Airport, the approach is over the Kowloon Peninsula. You fly over the container terminal at Kwai Chong and you're descending and you see the urban part of the Kowloon Peninsula come up under your plane, and the pilot's heading for a orange and white checkerboard painted on the side of the mountain. And at around, I don't know, below 500 feet, he or she starts to make the hard right turn. So the wing drops and you kind of slice across around, I don't know, you're dropping down below 500 feet and you're making this hard right turn to line up with Kai Tak Airport's runway. And it's a very dramatic, it was a very dramatic landing, especially if you're on the right side of the plane when the wind drops down, you can sort of see into people's apartments and on the rooftops, people doing their laundry and whatnot. So that was really exciting part of arriving back in Hong Kong. And but again, you know, while it was there, it's simply one of these Hong Kong facts of life. You know, this extraordinary airport approach and this airport, which is really was one of the last of Asia's like downtown airports, practically. And so all the things connected to that, the airline or the aircraft navigation beacons on the flight path, they're all part of this kind of infrastructure that guides the planes into Kai Tak. And I always thought it was interesting. I'm not like an aviation enthusiast or anything like that, but I just thought that having this airport where it was, the way it was kind of extraordinary, and I wanted to make pictures about that. So,
well, it pops up in a few of the books, and funnily enough, we own two of your artworks. One of them, my wife chose one, and I chose one. My wife chose the one of the school-aged. She's probably 10 years old on top of a roof, presumably in Kowloon Side. Maybe it looks kind of like Kowloon Side, and it could be the Walled City. I'm not sure, but she's doing homework on the image.
yeah, I do little school desks with
a little school desk, yeah, up on the roof.
Yeah, that is the Kowloon Walled City. Yeah.
That is the Kowloon Walled City, yeah. So I'm not sure if that's published on your gallery on your website, but that one is the one that my wife chose, and then I chose the one of there's a couple on their rooftop looking over other rooftops onto the Kai Tak runway.
Oh, with the plane,
it's sort of
the plane
dusk
making the turn.
The plane making the turn, yeah, that's the one I chose.
Okay, nice, a nice combination.
Yeah. So that's a very welcome interlude talking about Kai Tak, and just again, it's this sort of thing. It just, you kind of take it for granted. I guess you took it for granted. As a kid, I took it for granted. But then it's gone. And Hong Kong with Chek Lap Kok has a award-winning, Lord Norman Foster designed, amazing, very efficient, very award-winning airport now. But Kai Tak was just something out of a movie. I mean, you're thinking about, there's no movie in the 80s that didn't, that had Hong Kong in it, was shot in Hong Kong, that didn't somehow, it would have referenced Kai Tak in some way or other. It was sort of like a supporting actor in so many genres of pop culture, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and again, but I think, as you say, it was just normal. And when the announcement was made, I think it was around 1992 or so, or around that time that the airport was going to be replaced in 1998, you know, maybe some interest, picked up about Kai Tak since its days were numbered. But for the most part, during the 80s, it was just, one of those Hong Kong things. Um, a few filmmakers referenced it in a kind of knowing way. Others made it as part of just a scene setter, arriving in Hong Kong. There are some films that use those shots from the streets and just before the runway, you're looking up between buildings at the low-flying jets as they scream past. So it really was a signature kind of feature of the city. But for all of us who've used it, it was just the airport, and you enjoyed the ride in because it was always pretty dramatic, and you knew where to sit on the airplane to enjoy the view.
I think the 80s were special in a lot of ways. One other way I think they were special is that you really witnessed this clash between sort of cosmopolitan and local, and like you think about the airport, you're getting the emergence of like global luxury. I mean, it was sort of like people had more disposable income. They're spending money. I mean, I can imagine like, flying on business class or first class or going to these, exotic locations for holidays and things like that. All this consumer culture was really ramping up, in this period in the 80s. But at the same time, there was also this sort of local thing, where local knowledge really mattered, and I can think of one example with Kai Tak where, my dad, it sounds kind of silly nowadays, but, and you might relate to this, but we would land into Kai Tak and he would say, yeah, obviously you catch a taxi not in the lower ground level. You go up to where people are getting out of a taxi and you catch a taxi there, idiot. You don't wait in line for a taxi.
That's part of the local knowledge. The people who knew the drill. You're upstairs queuing for a taxi downstairs.
Right. But what I mean is these things, everything is now, okay, there's, you go through the line and you're a schmuck like everyone else, right? Going through all these procedures and everything like that. I mean, the 80s was this thing where it was like, yeah, it was kind of big city and everything like that. But then Hong Kong was like full of all this little local knowledge. Like, no, that guy, if you talk to this guy, you'll get a deal, like a genuine, like 30, 40% off. Or you genuinely get, like, you'd pick up a taxi right over here, before everything is now cosmopolitan and standardized.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Okay, here we are. We're back on Luard Road in Wan Chai.
Yeah.
Was this another one of the sort of big name nightclubs?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay.
It was, again, this was taken in 74. So my first.
Oh, this is back to 74.
Back in 74, yeah.
No, you can tell kind of by the font.
Yeah. This is like this is mid 80s. This was.
Oh, this is back to mid 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is like shore patrol. One of the Marines on duty.
Is this the same background at the Pussycat?
That's across the street, actually. That's at Club Gold Star.
Okay. What's the story here? He's got a Tweety bird tattoo.
So, I had just arrived in Hong Kong and wanted to photograph, everything. And I'd seen a book that I mentioned, of time life photographs. And apart from Hong Kong Harbor, it also had this other scene of two sailors taken by a photographer named Marie Cosindus, who's not really a name that's so well known anymore. But she had a really nice kind of portrait of two sailors, I think in Key West, And it just had this kind of, I don't know, this kind of lyrical glamour, young sailors in the sea and, on R&R or something in a just kind of some kind of a generic setting. And I really liked that picture. And so I guess I was just alert suddenly to like sailors in Hong Kong. And so, I'd been photographing in Vancouver, the kind of the downtown part of the city, and hanging out with people and asking if I could take their pictures. And so I just kind of applied that to people in Hong Kong. And so I saw some sailors and thought, well, maybe I can just hang out with them and just photograph what their life was like. I didn't think about it in terms of documentary or even portraiture or anything. I just kind of thought that sailors would be this interesting kind of subject. So I met some guys. I just kind of hung out with them, and they're basically like my age, and so I'm just following them around the tattoo parlors and the bars and just hanging out with them, taking pictures.
Redcliffe's Bar. This lasted a long time, didn't it? I think there's a nonprofit in Hong Kong that's now trying to collect and store and refurbish or rehabilitate some of the old neon, because it's part of that sort of material culture, really. That I don't think people realize how fast it would go. You take it for granted.
Yeah,
But
it's become a real kind of cultural touchstone, the whole legacy and memory of Hong Kong neon. And I know some of the signs have been collected by the Contemporary Art Museum M+. So some of that stuff is in their collection as well.
we're back in, this is Chongqing Mansions.
Nearby, it's actually,
nearby.
It is in Tsim Choi, but I think near Beijing Road and Hankow Road. He's actually the doorman for a nightclub next door, and the tattoo parlor is upstairs.
I think that this image is has been featured quite a lot.
Yeah, I don't always get to see, where these pictures end up, what it's like. Some people credit you carefully and properly, and others just kind of steal it. But yeah, I mean, the stuff is out there, and I do try to keep track of it because I do care about those things. But yeah, one can never know.
Yeah, this uncle's he's looking dapper.
Very dapper guy, indeed. Yeah.
But you've got a bit of motion. This is clearly handheld.
Yeah. I'm just on the sidewalk. I like the background, and I was just waiting for people to kind of walk into it to reveal my secrets. But yeah, I mean, it's a fairly standard way of making a picture.
Yeah, this is another image that's been featured. I mean, again, this is that sort of light that I was talking about earlier, that just, it comes in these shards.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see it, like, it. This image, I just love the sunlight with the artificial light. That interplay is so, I can just lose myself into an image like this.
Yeah, that was from probably the first hotel I stayed at in Hong Kong after arriving by ship. Walked up Nathan Road until I found some place up near, closer to Jordan, a little bit away from the really hardcore tourist area.
Upper Nathan Road.
Nathan Road, yeah, that just getting towards
Jordan, yeah.
And
well, the Yuhua Chinese products, I think, is still there. So that's Jordan. It's basically the Jordan MTR.
That'd be right, yeah.
Yeah, it's where you pop out. This is is this TST or?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay. Two Dragons Bar. Was that the one in the James Bond? What was the one that was featured in the James Bond? I think
that was Bottoms Up.
Bottoms Up, okay, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
But Seoul Palace, I think that'd been there for a long time. Yeah, because TST was an interesting mix. You'd get tourists, but the Japanese seemed to be quite fond of the TST area. And there was a couple streets there that were they had like a heavily catered to Japanese tourist,
Yeah,
uh, in the 80s, if I remember correctly.
yeah, indeed.
Is it the same night of the lorry, the back of the lorry photo?
No, it'd be same approach, but different neighborhood. So this is
Okay.
in Wan Chai residential area, which has now become kind of gentrified into, shops and bars and boutiques and restaurants. It's like Star Street and Starlight Terrace or Starlight Gardens is an apartment building there. Moon Terrace. It was this lovely little enclave, very quiet in the 80s. There were no shops. There were car repair places, that kind of business, and maybe a restaurant for workers. But very very close to Admiralty. But yeah, a very quiet, beautiful little enclave, which got turned into shops and boutiques next to a new office tower there. I forget which one. So it's part of the modern. It's part of modern Hong Kong now, but it kind of felt like a slightly before time. Just walking up from Queens Road East, you'd go up these narrow streets. Some have stairs on the sidewalks, and yeah, just a little enclave of small streets and alleys that was really quite pretty. And yeah, in any case, I made the picture there, and I was living not far from there. And on a trip out of Hong Kong, I left my window open in my apartment, and a typhoon blew through and flooded my apartment. A lot of my film was piled on the floor in
Uh-huh.
sleeves,
Yeah.
and it got water damaged. So I thought it was, I'd written off so many pictures, but decided it actually looks kind of interesting in its own way. So yeah, put it in a book.
Is this the same Sham Sai Po secondhand market?
That'd be the same place, yeah.
All right, we're back to here. Well, if I can just jump quickly to the other Hong Kong gallery.
Sure.
Here we go. This is a book that, between yourself and Ian Lambo, you would probably be most well known for. Would you say? I mean, is that
Yeah, no, I think people know, they know this, and in a way, it's maybe even a parallel and slightly separate audience, because there are many people who are completely fascinated with the Kowloon Walled City, and rightfully so. It was an amazing place. And in a way, they kind of don't care who made the pictures. They're just interested in
Mhm.
the information about the place. So they'll, buy the book and watch or collect anything related to the Kowloon Walled City without necessarily caring who actually made it, because it's their interest is not focused on what I do. They're focused on the Kowloon Walled City. So there's obviously crossover, but at the same time, there's definitely a separate audience who are just interested in this and perhaps couldn't care less about what other things I did.
so ordinary. If you took a slice of any of these facades, you could find cognates littered around the area. But when you put together and with the context of what this place was, I mean, I think every year that goes by, we realize how remarkable, how unique this place really was, right?
I mean, I think so. There's always a new audience, a new constituency discovering the Kowloon Walled City. I mean, it's been gone for, well, what is it now? Almost 30 years, 1993. It's so much better known now than when it existed, by far. And it's extraordinary that it's had this life, this afterlife. It somehow taps into different things that are of our time, perhaps of our near future, and certainly connected to Hong Kong's recent history. And again, it's one of those things that wasn't appreciated or understood while it existed. Ian and I got interested in the place and, spent a good few years photographing it, doing research, working with other people to help make sense of it. Like how many people lived there? How did it come to be? What's the history? What are the politics? So all that is explained in the book, but none of that information was available at the time, and not just because it's before the internet. It's because there was no interest in it, and so it only made the news when there was a fire or some kind of crime that happened to be committed in the walled city. So if you wanted to know about the walled city, you'd probably have to go to the public library and go through back issues of newspapers looking for events that might have been indexed with the walled city mentioned. So it wasn't an easy place to find anything out about it at the time. And I literally kind of stumbled onto it one night when I was photographing near the airport, and just realized that that thing at the end of the block had to be the Kowloon Walled City. So, you like so many things back then, you had to see it for yourself to know anything about it.
I read, I think in the book, that it was 300 interconnected structures that made up this sort of super organism that was the walled city. It was like stitched together, probably with zero town planning approval. I mean, I think almost certainly.
No engineers, no architects, no planning, no permits of any kind. It was what it was because it fell outside the parameters of the treaty that ceded Hong Kong to Britain. It was little piece of sovereign Chinese territory that wasn't included in the treaty. And so, as such, nothing happened there because China had its own problems to deal with. But the Hong Kong administration respected the letter of that agreement and didn't do anything there. And so it started as a squatter community that got built on and built on until it went vertical. And, Hong Kong law didn't apply there for certainly in the beginning. And that's why you had unlicensed doctors and dentists who could operate there, and food factories and all other manner of businesses. It all fell outside of Hong Kong law. The rumor was that the police never went there, and I don't think that was ever truly the case. The government allowed all sorts of different activities to go on there that couldn't go on in Hong Kong proper, let's call it. But in the 60s, a murder was committed there, and the Hong Kong government conferred with the Foreign Office in London to get approval to send the police in to arrest the guy who had basically was hiding out in the walled city. And approval was given, and he was arrested. Beijing didn't complain about that. And so from that point on, you can say more normal policing went on in the walled city. But right to the end, all the unlicensed food factories and dentists and doctors who trained in the mainland but didn't have Hong Kong qualifications, they operated there right until the end.
This is dusk?
That's right. Yeah, just a dusk twilight scene up on the roof, one of the roofs.
No elevators?
There wasn't a working elevator in any of those 300 buildings.
No, and I can imagine it would have been a shocking fire inspection report.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been comically bad.
Yeah.
And I've seen versions of this, but it's sort of like people leaving their furniture and I don't know, but those stairwells were clogged with all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there were, you can say, maintenance of a regular sort that kind of eventually cleared things away. If it was blocking an alley or a street or a stairway. But yeah, stuff definitely did accumulate.
This is the one.
Oh, okay, yeah, indeed.
We have this.
Lovely.
I love this photo. It gives me, of all the photos I could have chosen, I actually told my wife before we made the decision, I told her I was going to choose the one of the two guys making cha siu in the bowels of the thing. And then she gave me such a frown. So this, I guess, is my second favorite after the cha siu, the illegal cha siu. But this one, I just connect with this scene so much. You know?
No, it's a quintessential Kowloon Walled City moment that played out like every night as the planes, when they're landing from that direction, which is 90% of the time, they make that beautiful low turn, straighten out, and then they're on the runway. It's a beautiful evening scene almost every day of the week.
Here, it's a father and daughter. It's hard to say. Is it a couple? I can't really make it out. It's a couple.
Mm.
But, they've carved out their little slice of tranquility.
Totally.
That's what I love about this scene. It's so evocative for me. And it's something that it's sort of, with what I'm doing, we've got our farm and we're working on this farm wellness concept. Like, I think, this image, it just reminds me like city people, they need a respite from all of the stress and anxiety that surrounds them, and somehow this couple they've just found this little moment. It's just a perfect moment on a perfect afternoon.
Yeah.
And they're just enjoying the view. You're comfortably away from them, giving them their space, which is nice. And they're just enjoying this scene, this moment, and what a stunningly beautiful city.
It is. Yeah. It's one of the greatest cities on earth. No question.
And that's something that people don't quite grasp if you haven't been there or you haven't spent much time there. It's just that there's tons of green. It's green and it's accessible in a way that you could be in this sort of environment and then, 4-5 stops on the MTR, hike up, and you're on some section of the Macleos Trail.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. This looks like straight out of the Bloodsport movie.
This was one of the main streets in the walled city. So yeah, it was, I'm not sure if exactly it is this one where the movie Bloodsport begins, but very similar to it indeed. Yeah, just a typical street scene in the walled city.
You can almost smell it. That sort of kind of acrid, it's damp. It's got there's a bit of diesel fume, the burning candle.
You got it.
Yeah, this is the one. I told my wife I'm going to choose this one and stick it in our living room.
I'm sure she's happy with you that you changed her mind.
Yeah, this one was a little bit raw, but what's happening here? I mean, how did you get access to this and what did you have an interaction with these two chaps?
You know, in the beginning, before the announcement about the demolition and the compensation or rehousing for Walled City residents, people didn't like photographers there because the only press the Walled City had ever gotten was by photographers or writers talking about how dreadful it was. So having a camera in the beginning was a little problematic. It took some time to kind of win people over, but I used a lot of lighting equipment in the beginning to kind of, for one thing, illuminate the place, but also when photographing people, not particularly in this scene, but when doing portraits, let's say, to light them, to light people in the same way I would light a person I was photographing for Time magazine or for Fortune, a CEO or a celebrity or whatever. So I started using that kind of lighting equipment in the beginning as a way to not make conventional black and white pictures of a so-called gritty subject. I wanted to show what this place actually looked like, and obviously color is what places look like. So I really wanted to not do it in any kind of a, let's call it a classical black and white documentary way. And so I used a lot of, I carried a lot of equipment with me in the beginning to just kind of, on one hand, show a level of seriousness. It means you've got to set it up and kind of stake your ground. People can see what you're doing. If anybody has a problem with it, they can come and talk to you, rather than try to steal pictures. I knew instantly that that's no way that's going to work in a place like this. And so, little by little, people got to know me. Some people got to know me. And, I'd make prints and give them to people and whatnot to kind of say thanks. And they could tell their friends that this guy's okay. You should let him take your picture too, that kind of thing. But in this particular case, this would be open to one of those alleys. So it's just, this is open for all to see. It's just facing one of the lanes, and you walk by it and you can hear the guy using the blowtorch to, cook the hair, burn the hair off the
singe it
pork and whatnot. So it's just an active open scene, and I'm there with my gear, and I just ask them to make a picture, and they're not bothered. So
you mentioned earlier that you used to have you'd have two bodies, and you'd have color and black and white. From what I've seen, all of your published books are all color.
And so, for the most part, that's certainly true. In some of them, books that deal with the earlier work from the 70s and 80s, there might be a small section of black and white, or there might be some pictures interspersed with black and white. In some of them, I don't separate it in terms of a black and white approach or a color approach. Things are kind of mixed together in some books. In others, there might be a separate black and white section. So I present the black and white as well in different ways in different books.
This is amazing. He's making plungers.
Rubber plungers, yeah. Specialty place. And again, I'm using a light, like a softbox off camera. It looks pretty natural, and that's mostly the effect I was going for. But I knew that to be able to see inside these places, I need to light them. And, so that's what I did.
So the fact that he's looking away from the camera, is that a stylistic choice? When you're arranging the book, did you want to does it work better as a sort of corpus if you don't have every single photo where the subject is looking back at you?
Well, I think so. You want to show these scenes of what it's like to be in them, and just allow people to do what they do. It's just it is in one sense a stylistic choice, but it's also just, what are you trying to do here? I'm not trying to have everybody look at me. I want to see what it looks like if I'm invisible or if I wasn't here. So you just tell people to go back to what you're doing or just kind of get on with your day. Don't let me interrupt. Just ignore me. So
Yeah, this is another relatable scene. Just going about daily life.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that of course was the whole reason for doing the book, was to show what this place is like. And what it's like is people just leading ordinary lives in this kind of extraordinary physical, architectural, social situation. And, that's the first thing you notice once you get past being like shocked and overwhelmed by what the place is like physically. You see it's people trying to get on with daily life, educate their kids, bring up their families, you know, make things, go to work, like everybody. And so, in a way, it was, just trying to set the record straight about what this place was like, because it was nothing like everything you'd heard about it up to that point, which was, the drugs and gambling and vice and all of that. I mean, to some extent, that's there in the walled city because it's there everywhere in Hong Kong. In working class areas of Hong Kong, there's drugs. There's not prostitution in the street, but the drugs are part of life in working class Hong Kong. And, so is normal levels of low level crime, let's call it pickpocketing or theft or that kind of thing. But the walled city was probably much safer than other neighborhoods in a way, just because it was a bit more of a community. People kind of knew each other in a way that maybe wasn't happening just across the street. So it did have this kind of vertical village thing going on, which, you know, I wanted to photograph, and so getting inside people's homes and businesses, that became the way of working, was just to convince as many people as possible to let me photograph what they were doing or how they lived. People's homes are the most difficult, and so I consciously tried to add as many as possible of those near as the project approached its end. We both realized that both Ian and I realized I'm going to have to get more homes into this project to be, representative of what it's like. But yeah, you basically have a checklist, and once you decide to make a book, you look at what you've got, then you think about what you need, and on you go.
Fish balls. Did you, contemporaneously publish some of these images, as more newsy type of images back in the day?
I mean, Time magazine ran a feature maybe 1990, so about 3 years into the project. The book hadn't come out yet. Ian and I had ambitions to make a book, so we could say at that point we're actively working on a book. But I don't believe it was presented in Time as a book in progress or anything like that. It was just presented as a feature about the walled city. And inevitably, they took the more sensational route.
Of course.
Its history as a den of iniquity and all of that. I mean, it was a part of the place, but, like I say, it wasn't what was going on when I started photographing there. All of that drug related stuff. And, there used to be strip shows and much more obvious prostitution back in the 60s. But by the time I started photographing there in the mid to late 80s, that had all gone to other parts of Hong Kong. You didn't have to go to the walled city. You wouldn't go to the walled city for that in the 1980s. That was in Tsim Sha Tsui and Wan Chai, and I mean anywhere else really.
Oh, the postman.
Yeah, the postmen in the walled city, they really had to have stamina to negotiate those building stairs, 13 floors up and
Oh yeah.
13 floors down. So they had really ingenious ways to deal with that by going up one building, crossing the rooftop to another, and then going down the other building to get the mail.
Unreal.
Yeah, no, totally super
Unreal.
interesting and ingenious.
There we go. Another shot. So you went back and forth between handheld and tripod?
I did, yeah. I go inside a shop or a home or do a long exposure in an alley, but also I'd be ready for things happening. So I'd have a camera with flash just in case something else is happening while I'm doing a longer exposure or a picture with lighting, like stands and soft boxes and the rest of it.
So you wanted to be faithful to the subject, but at the same time, I mean, clearly, it's not. It never feels clinical. It never feels sort of like 100% documentary. You can certainly see there's creative stylistic choices that you've made that are apparent in the individual photographs and the book as a whole.
Yeah, I was just starting my working career at this point. I just stopped working for the BBC as a sound recordist, and I was just becoming a working photographer. So my ambition was, to make a book and also to get recognized as a photographer, to get published. I was completely unknown at this point, so I'm just starting to work for magazines. And, so I had ambitions to get this project into a magazine as well, but in the right way, as much as I could. And so maybe that's why stylistically it reads a little more journalistic or overtly documentary than some of my later work. Because I wanted to be a working photographer and was just making that change at that time, 1987, 88.
And at this time, like for this roll of film, did you still have to send it to Australia or?
No, I could process
Back to
this in
Canada?
Hong Kong mercifully.
Okay.
So yeah, this was E6. The Walled City. There's a little bit of Kodachrome,
Ektachrome.
Ektachrome and Fujichrome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, the kids these days don't understand that feeling of like sending your film. And it's like, I mean, it's your livelihood in a way, right? I mean, the labs were reliable, but every once in a while a roll would go missing.
yeah, touch wood.
Touch wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that classical Hong Kong tile it's almost like
Yeah.
comically retro these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually have it. We did our laundry room in this tile.
Oh, nice. Beautiful.
I was talking to the factory in China and I was trying to explain it to them. I was like, Hong Kong, the 香港, 那个什么, and I said a couple of words and then he was like, oh, okay, you mean these 20? And he goes, he had one in yellow, green, this, purple, brown.
Wow.
It's like a total, like you just type in like Hong Kong retro tile and then this thing pops up.
Wow. Amazing. Oh,
So
beautiful stuff.
this scene, this is the dentist. This is a patient.
It's a dentist. I think officially the dentist's assistant, perhaps
The
his
dentist
wife.
assistant.
But that was their clinic just off one of the main alleys.
Oh, this one. Before I knew it, I was in the category of people who know your images before they know you. This image has traveled.
Oh.
People know this image.
Interesting.
He's got that sort of grumpy thing with just holding the cigarette in his mouth. And then the daughter is doing her sort of defiant ballerina routine. Then you got the other kid. And this is just, I mean, What a scene. What a scene you've captured here.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
And as you said, it's that the light, right? The fact that you've brought some light box or you've directed the light there.
Yeah.
It's documentary, but at the same time, there's obviously like a fine art sort of base to this, because I can take one look at this and know that the scene doesn't look like this if you walk through it. There is some manipulation of the light to achieve this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are working, they're moving. So I could make a picture of the space without the people that would look kind of the way it looks when you walk in with your eye and register all of it. But to have people doing what they do, you need to freeze them. And so you need a light, strobe. And, it's a simple setup, just off camera, softbox up a little bit high. And, it's a usually kind of a flattering light, a little bit of sculpting, not, and not too harsh, not too soft. So
it's such a striking image too, because some of the flower is flown up, creating this sort of ghost effect around it. It's this halo effect around it. It's a striking image, and this type of image just really sticks with me.
Well, thanks.
I mean,
Yeah,
look at that one.
saying that. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
I mean, this is another one. This is almost like this is that effect when you have a long exposure and then you really juice the flash and you sort of get the...
Yeah, you need a low shutter speed with this film to register the stuff off camera that's not going to be in, the flash won't reach it. So you don't want it to be totally black back there. And so you need a slow shutter speed. So as a result, you get a bit of ghosting when there's movement. I mean, it's just sort of it's the limitations of everything you're working with, in those days, there's no film fast enough that looks good to use flash that's going to register everything in you can say, a sharp way. With digital, I mean, it'd be a completely different look and a completely different book if you'd had today's cameras and could photograph back then. But technically, just certain things weren't possible, so you had to make your choices. And, it's not the most pretty picture in the world in any formal sense, but, kind of prepares, it kind of registers all the stuff that needs to be there. Somebody had a broken flour sack ahead of him and there's a trail of flour on the ground and he's balancing, I don't know what it is, 80 kilos or something on his shoulders, his hands,
What's happening here?
So this is a weaving factory, and so a one-man weaving factory, and this guy is just, I guess, taking this stuff and piling product. There's various other scenes from this factory, and in the book I think we used a couple of others as well, or maybe not even this one in the book. I can't even remember. But typically you go into a scene and you make a good number of pictures if you can, and in the edit you make your choices. And when you go back after 20 years, you maybe question some of those early choices. And if you do another volume or an update, you've got a chance to replace things, swap things. Tastes change. So yeah, a noodle factory with just the flour dust all over everything.
Do you have any working rules that you've kept, working principles that you've used as a frame, as a guide for how you work with subjects or how you treat your photographs? Like, for example, Cartier-Bresson, he really didn't like to crop, and that's why you see some of his images are a little wonky, because he just sort of kind of insisted on keeping the full frame.
Maybe a photograph was aspiring to, let's call it photographic truth at least. So I don't ever intend to crop.
Mhm.
And when, you know, I do some workshops, and I certainly don't want people to bring me cropped pictures, you know. Um, so as a rule, yeah, I'll say don't crop, and I usually don't. But if I'm making a cover and it's a vertical book and it's a horizontal picture that I want to put on the cover, I might do what the magazines did back in the day and just do it, you know. I haven't done it yet on a cover, but never say never. I don't, I don't think photographic truth exists anymore.
Oh, certainly not with some of these AI tools.
Sure, and it's all based on trust, anyways. So even back in my magazine career, you trusted magazines to say in the caption that what is in the picture is what is going on. But once you introduce words, then okay, it takes it in a different direction,
Yeah.
and it could completely dictate what you're supposed to be seeing. So once you put words with pictures, then something else happens. But I'm not a free television photographic image purist.
This is one of your few sort of backlit subjects. It's quite stands out quite a bit.
Yeah, it's sunlight, just middle of the day, sun like overhead, just a beam down in this well. At the bottom of 13 floors, there's this public water standpipe where on the right side somebody's thawing some frozen eels with a stream of water coming out of.
Is that what they're doing? Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah. And this gentleman is washing his hair there, obviously a bottle of shampoo on top of the thing.
Wow. With our classic tile, it's a different variety, different version. But wow. And you've got the light on his leg, his left leg.
I just walked into that, it's
Yeah.
not like I set anything up. I stumbled across that.
Was there a courtyard in the middle of the walled city?
Yeah, at the bottom of the center of the walled city, it was kind of just like a donut hole. The walled city had this space in the middle where nothing was built, and that was because of the Qing Dynasty administrative buildings that kind of dictated the whole subsequent relationship of the walled city with the neighboring land and Hong Kong itself. So those buildings were where the Qing Dynasty magistrate traveling with a contingent of troops would billet the soldiers and the court officers as they traveled in that part of South China to hear court cases every so often. And because of that, because of that connection to the emperor, the Brits respected that and left that area out of the treaty, and that became the walled city when China no longer had the wherewithal to do anything like anywhere nearby. It was consumed with its own problems, and so it just became a squatter area.
This would have been the main avenue.
Yeah, or one of the offshoots. Yeah, I think that's West City Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, more eels.
Yeah, more eel for fishbowl making.
Wow. The funny thing is that even if it was a little bit scuzzy looking, the final product was probably healthier than what we eat nowadays. It was made out of real eels.
Real eel, yeah. And it was, bought by restaurants and other places using fish bowls throughout Hong Kong.
I like the movement here. This is like 1/30th of a second ish.
Ish. This was a new Kodachrome film showed up at some point in the late 80s, Kodachrome 200. So it was like
Mm.
a fast Kodachrome, quite grainy, but a nice palette, a
Mm.
slightly red magenta palette. So it worked really well under fluorescent. You kind of didn't get that super green cast that you often got
Mm.
with daylight film under fluorescent.
Like the Lori shot.
Yeah, yeah, or like how so much of the fluorescent light looks green, yeah, on daylight film, and some mercury vapor goes kind of cyan. So that film kind of compensated a bit for the cyan green in a lot of fluorescent.
Mm.
So I would have lit the pig carcasses on the floor there. I probably had a softbox on top of it, make them look a little bit more neutral color.
Oh, another confronting shot.
I wanted to reference the history about drugs there, I mean, I didn't want to leave it out. I didn't want to say anything other than people use drugs here too in the walled city, like they do everywhere else in working class Hong Kong. And there is this history of drug use in the walled city. So it was just a way to talk about that. And so I contacted Jackie Pullinger, who you might know is the Christian missionary who operated not just a church, but a social services group in the walled city where she tried to get people off their heroin addiction.
Oh yeah, she's in the documentary, right? The video documentary.
She would be, yeah. And she also she's kind of referenced a little bit in, I'm trying to remember which movie it is. Maybe Long Arm of the Law, which has a scene shot inside the walled city where they're going through an alley, and you have this English girl talking to some walled city person in heavily accented Cantonese because she speaks Cantonese, and her group works to get people, cure them of their heroin addiction. So I went through her to find somebody who could help me make this kind of a picture. So somebody knew somebody, and it all happened that way.
So you, whether you realized it or not, you took on quite a responsibility in terms of having to balance out the book as a whole, right? Like if you didn't include this photo, in a sense, even if it's a small part of the walled city story, it was there. It certainly was there. So in a sense, you had a responsibility to put this image in there.
Well, it's an open question, isn't it? Would it be missed if it wasn't there? Probably not. But I think it helps. It helps an aspiration at least to be thorough. You know, to be comprehensive, to look at it from all angles, which is what we tried to do.
What's happening here?
Yeah, this guy is clearing the trash that's accumulated in the pipes and the tubing. So, people disposed of their garbage by just hucking it out their window, and it goes down in between buildings, it gets stuck in the piping. And it wouldn't matter so much. It's just that after a rain, the rain stops, but that stuff continues dripping
Yeah.
for days. So it becomes very unpleasant moving through the walled city after the rain, because all that stuff, the rain water accumulates in the garbage and continues dripping for days. So it's just not very pleasant.
Wow, there we go.
And
That's
so there's
is that the donut?
yeah, that's part of it. There's I think that's not the donut. It's just a separate well at the bottom of 13 floors where there's a temple, and they built a grill over the roof of the temple to keep the garbage off the temple roof, but it just accumulates on the grill. So, Walled City folks, for all their community spirit, they still maybe had a ways to go for certain certain parts of it. So that's the bottom of it.
That's the, yeah. Mm.
Family run store, a convenience store, daily goods, cigarettes and Kleenex and canned fish and toilet paper.
Yeah. And he's got an owie. Yeah.
So yeah, that's trying to show these live work spaces, let's call it. So the little shop out front, living area, home at the back.
Presumably when you'd go in, it wasn't just for an hour. It was that sort of multi-hour sort of, there would be
An hour would be enough, actually.
An hour would be enough. Okay.
Yeah. Usually less than that, actually. And I don't want to, I've got my own, I guess, program trying to get as much done as possible, and I don't really need that much time as long as people are cooperative.
Yeah.
I can get things done fairly quickly.
Oh, wild. Yeah. So I guess it was a thing. I mean, people would go in there and it'd be a 30-40% savings going to see the dentist in the Walled City.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
Maybe
right.
more.
Maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah. This is that just quintessentially Hong Kong thing of you'd open your main door and then close the gate. Right. So you get airflow in your apartment, but still be secure.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, this is a great shot. I mean,
this is the most public facing side of the Walled City. It's the one side where there was car traffic. So if you got in a taxi and said, "Take me to the Walled City," this is where they drop you on the street. So all the dentist and doctor signs, and just across the street, public housing estate or Hong Kong proper, let's call it. So these dentists and doctors couldn't practice there, but inside the Walled City, it's all okay.
this image has traveled.
Oh, interesting.
I know this image. I love how linear it is. And maybe that's a bit of OCD, but I really I like that about this image. And what's happening with the light here? It almost looks like daylight.
Again, I've just used my softbox to kind of just light the space. I can't remember why the existing daylight wasn't acceptable. Maybe I planned to photograph a person who then changed their mind. So I had the light set up and just made the picture anyways with the light. Maybe did some without the light, but like the way this one kind of popped, with the light on it.
Day in the life. This could be anywhere in Hong Kong.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is just the look of working class apartments in Hong Kong. That's how they looked. And what does the photographer want? Usually, it's just to be ignored, right? That's the kind of the dream, is to be invisible. So once you spend most of your energy is actually trying to make people just ignore you, so you can do things like this, and it's fairly simple and straightforward. But
so they've invited you into their space.
I wanted to make pictures of people in their homes and was looking for people to do that. And my Cantonese is pretty basic, but when you're carrying, all that gear, it's kind of obvious what you're doing. And also, I also worked with a colleague, Emmy Lung, who Ian and I worked with for about a year on the project, and she was great at getting me into situations like this. If I don't remember if I was by myself or she was with me at this particular time, but she was great at getting me into these sorts of situations. But as you've noted, when the weather's warm, the doors are open, the grill might be closed, but it's sort of semi-public, semi-private as you walk down a hallway in the Walled City, and You can stick your nose into people's places and ask. And to be honest, most people were okay. And of course, some said no, but most people were actually okay about being photographed, especially after the news about the place that it was going to be torn down. Then, at that point, people understood what you're doing.
And when was that announcement?
That was 87.
87. So there's 6 years.
Yeah.
And even in those 6 years, seems like it to this generation, it just seems bizarre, seems unfathomable that there wouldn't be more interest in sort of documenting or somehow capturing this. I mean, what was the feeling at the time? It was just sort of, the news just came and went and no one really paid attention?
Basically, yeah. I mean, people thought this slum deserves to go. Why would you want to photograph it even? I mean, that was the attitude really, of why would you pay attention to that place? And even today there's people who look at this project and unfathomably to me consider this, kind of poverty porn. You get that kind of reaction from some people. Nobody in the walled city has that attitude about it. Even if they wanted to leave the walled city and move to a better place, as most people did, every person without fail who I've talked to who lived in the walled city is very pleased there's a record about what life was like there. So, say what you will, but I take my cue from the people that live there, not from people born after the fact who form an opinion about whether it's okay to do it or not.
The poverty porn, I mean, clearly there were a number of stylistic choices, a number of editorial choices you had to make. The poverty porn, I mean, you would know it if you saw it.
I feel that's what everybody else had done up until the point that I arrived. And I wanted to set the record straight about it, Everybody else was making it look gritty and dangerous, long after it was no longer that, So my intention from the get-go was, wow, this place is extraordinary, but not in the way anybody knows about. It's not like it bothers me or anything, but it's just, I get that, and was like, it almost makes me laugh because, the idea to not do something being better than the idea to do it, in terms of making a record. I think it's absurd.
I second that. Oh, here we go. This is our photo. This is what we have. We bought the largest size. I told my wife, don't go with the medium size. Blue Lotus, it was small, medium, large. And I just said, look, medium just doesn't do it. You got to go big or go home. We're glad that we went with the large size. And people who see this image in our home, it's funny the reaction it gets from people. I mean, some people are like, what? It's just gray and dull, and why would you put this in your home? I mean, my Hong Kong mother-in-law, Hong Kong born and raised mother-in-law, just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
I think she gets it, she doesn't get it, she gets it kind of thing. It's sort of torn, right? But we like it because you've just captured this like little glimpse of, I don't know, is it too much to read into it? Like sort of this like plucky Hong Kong spirit? I mean, imagine that. Imagine all of the things that she has to deal with that a kid living in the mid-levels just is totally oblivious to. She's got to deal with, rubbish, decomposing rubbish falling on her as she walks, back home.
Yeah.
And then yet she climbs up onto the roof with this foldable chair and she does her homework.
Yeah. It was a playground, it was a study space, it was a rest space, a little bit of a garbage dump. It was a lot of things going on up there, but at the end of the day, it was really quite pleasant. And I mean, I always loved reaching the rooftop, especially in the hotter months. It was just so great to arrive up there into the breeze and you know the amazing overview of the surrounding area. So it was there are quite a lot of rooftop pictures just because it was, you can say, a little more pleasant to be up there, especially after you've been in one of the food factories down below. So yeah, I love being up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little flash to kind of
Yeah.
make the antenna stand out. And a long exposure, you see the
Mhm.
light trail from the airplane coming in. So it's a
Mm.
mix of, yeah, long exposure with flash.
Mm. This one, I'm sure the SCMPs publish this.
I believe they have, yeah.
Yeah. They're just kids playing, just like anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, totally.
You can see the Regal Kowloon Hotel.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, you're Hong Kong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how many times, did we cross over on that,
The air bridge, yeah.
the air bridge? Yeah. This one's a little bit postcardy for me.
Fair enough.
But again, quintessential Hong Kong. Yeah, wow. And you've got two police officers.
Yeah.
Well, it's a remarkable book, remarkable time, and a remarkable set of images. The amount of attention and care that went into compiling that, I think, I don't know, it's very evident to me that you put a lot into it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just starting my magazine career, like I mentioned, and so I was in and out of Hong Kong during those years a lot, working all over the region. But for my downtime in Hong Kong, that's what I did. Was photograph the walled city. So yeah, I was living on the Hong Kong side in above Central, mid levels. Walked down to the Mandarin Hotel where the airport bus stopped, and I'd get on the bus and take it to the airport and walk the few blocks to the walled city. That was the quickest way for me to get there. So that was kind of my routine, when I was in Hong Kong in between assignments around the region. And getting to know the walled city was fascinating in every way. And then there were the days that were just work. It's like August, and it's 32 degrees, and the sky is white. Everything looks horrible, and the air conditioning on the bus isn't working, and it's a little bit like maybe you'd rather go see a movie or something, not, I'm not complaining, but there were the odd day where it felt a bit like work because um, it's a tough place to be when it's hot, and but it's where people are living and working, and I guess it's like anything. Once you get going, and everything's fine. But it's just like maybe it's like taking the bus to the gym or something. I don't know. It's like you're in for some work. Um, yeah, once you get going, it's totally fine. And I can't say I made friends there, but I got to know. I mean, what I really wanted was acceptance is not the right word. It's more like being ignored is a huge thing. Like that's really the ultimate compliment, you know, to just ignore someone like me and physically and literally opening the door to a factory or a home and letting me get on with things. That's a huge thing to get from people, and people did that for me. So I mean, they were amazing. Just to be allowed to get on with it. Make your pictures for no reason, no benefit to any individual, but hopefully at the end of the day you get this record of the place. So that maybe counts for something. And like I say, had the place lasted just a few years longer, it would be young Hong Kong photographers and filmmakers who would have done it. It's just kind of odd it fell to someone like me and Ian.
So now that you have moved back to Canada and you look back on your time in Asia, how do you think of that period of your life?
After you've lived in like Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Tokyo, moving back to a mid-sized Canadian city is a little less stimulating in terms of walking around the streets. And it took a while to adjust, but it's fine now. But it was tough in the beginning, I got to say. You get used to life being a certain way, quite stimulating, just being in the street. And I don't think I'm talking about just as a photographer. I'm just talking about as a person walking around. There's just lots to look at, lots to do, all in a very concentrated space. And you get used to life being like that. So yeah, I kind of missed that. I mean, I knew what I was in for, so it wasn't a shock or anything. But yeah, it took some time to adjust. Um, you know, Fortunately, I get to go back, often for one reason or another. So it's not like I'm cut off. And I've been doing shows at with M Plus, the museum in Hong Kong.
Yeah, of course.
Working with a gallery in Hong Kong and doing workshops in Japan. So I'm still connected to the region, and I'm still there a lot, which I like.
So, what about some of your work nowadays? And we think about going back to your earliest stuff, like the Under Vancouver story, which we don't have time to get into, but are you, is it sort of a kind of full circle type of thing now where you're looking at your hometown and just rediscovering certain aspects of Vancouver and BC and just saying to yourself, wow, there were so many amazing chapters, in Asia and things like that, but there's a lot of cool stuff here in Canada and BC too.
Yeah, I very happily and luckily got invited to do a career retrospective show at a museum here in July. So I'm working on that. That's 50 plus years of pictures. So we've made a book to go with it, and the show happens in July. So I'm really and happily busy preparing all that. But yeah, for making new work, I mean, you make work where you are. I do, anyways, and it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't have to be about the place in terms of this is a portrait of a place. It can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. So I'm making pictures here, and in some ways they align with how things have changed since I lived here earlier in the 70s and 80s, and what this new place is like. And then there's the pictures I make that don't really have anything to do with any of that. They just kind of happen to be made here because this is where I am. So I guess I'm always, maybe doing two things, like one which is more focused and another which is less about anything identifiable as a place in terms of the place being the subject. It's where I happen to be making the pictures, but it's not necessarily about that.
So, Greg, where can people find you? Are you on Instagram? Are you active in some other social media platforms?
Instagram is sort of the only thing I do with any regularity, and you can find me at Greg for a day. So that's my Instagram tag. And that's been unexpected. Um, you know, I guess I was a late adapter of social media generally, but my archive is pretty deep, so I'm always discovering new things, and they, in one way or another, eventually seem to find their way onto Instagram. So I try to keep that going, and it gives me a reason to kind of keep going through the archive, looking for things and getting it scanned and seeing what stuff looks like after many years.
Well, with that, Greg, really thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing insights from a chapter that is just remarkable in so many different ways. I mean, the Hong Kong in the 80s chapter alone, right? Oh, we didn't even mention, didn't you photograph Chow Yun Fat?
I had the great pleasure of
Yeah.
photographing China a couple of times. Yeah,
The one with the
bringing back note.
burning banknote. That is
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah, yeah. That was early magazine days. Just photographing the Hong Kong movie industry, kind of being a fly in the wall on some of the productions, and then later doing a more formal portrait with him on the rooftop of Ocean Terminal in Tsim Sha Tsui. He arrived in a sports car, and yeah, the two of us spent a companionable half hour or so up on the rooftop just making pictures, and then he sped away at the end of it. No assistants or publicity people, just just the two of us. That was super
That's
fun.
so cool.
I don't think they do things like that anymore, but
No.
yeah.
Again, thank you for bearing witness to that particular period, with the walled city, because I mean, as you say, I mean, it could have been more in line with that poverty porn. But I think that you've found a way to blend the sort of documentarian component with what are virtually fine art pieces, which as pure images stand up, and that's not easy. So really hats off to you.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you for that.
And thank you.